It's just after the break of dawn on Sojourner Farm in western New York, and yet we're already too late to have witnessed the actual start of the workday. All across the state and many parts of the country, farmers have already been at it for hours. Herding and feeding livestock, picking, sorting, tilling, processing, doing whatever it takes to put food on our tables. They're the backbone of our food system, and the fact is, early mornings are nowhere near the top of the list of sacrifices these feeders of America must endure. And given that they quite literally hold our survival in the palm of their hands, maybe it's time to take a closer look at what makes our food systems tick, and talk to the hardworking men and women who keep this fragile system going against all odds.
China is battling a new and rapidly spreading respiratory virus. The number of people infected has tripled to more than 200.
The ability of the deadly coronavirus to spread is getting stronger.
The first case of coronavirus has been confirmed here in the United States. The patient...
I have today declared that the coronavirus presents a public health emergency in the United States.
There are now more than 118,000 cases in 114 countries, and 4,291 people have lost their lives. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
It seemingly came out of nowhere, even though we'd been warned that it was coming. Within a matter of weeks, the COVID-19 virus had breached the borders of the People's Republic of China and spread throughout the world like wildfire. And only 8 days after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, the first stay-at-home order was issued in California. By April 2020, about half the world's population was under some form of lockdown. And although the lockdowns were necessary to mitigate the spread of the virus, most industries experienced severe supply chain disruptions because of them.
U.S. equities have gone through a sizable correction this week with the outbreak of the coronavirus spreading across the globe and disrupting the different supply chains.
COVID-19 has toppled the global economy, creating enormous shocks to supply and demand.
But critical infrastructure couldn't be allowed to fail. Sectors like energy, defense, and agriculture had to be given special consideration. So guidelines for essential workers were developed by different agencies in individual states. And while they all varied in how they chose to define essential workers, they all knew that the agriculture and food production sector had to be at or near the top of the list. To help shore up the system, a series of economic stimulus packages were approved by Congress. And although these lifelines ensured that net farm income would be at its highest since 2014, by the end of 2020, 110,000 eating and drinking establishments had closed. 2.5 million restaurant industry jobs had disappeared, and billions were still lost from supply chain, workforce, food waste, and trade deficit issues. Whether things like climate change, backlash from tariff wars, and land loss are factored into the equation, the USDA's assessment of tough times having been underway for years is an undeniable fact. The arrival of COVID-19 in 2020 created the perfect storm. It exposed our vulnerabilities while simultaneously revealing our resilience.
With restaurants and such shutting down, the schools not being open, we were worried that we wouldn't have places for our product to go.
What do I think of the pandemic? I think it's a shame that it happened. scared to death.
You know, our employees were afraid, our volunteers were afraid, even our clients were afraid of trying not to get ill, trying to ensure that we were all keeping each other safe while also making sure that no one was hungry.
Initially, we were really kind of worried about what would happen. We didn't know we have all this crop in the field and everything, and you know, are we going to be able to sell it?
I mean, I probably worked double what I normally work in the month of April, just trying to network with other farmers markets and piece together how are we going to limit the number of people at one time? How are we going to, you know, all those things. It was incredibly stressful.
The money that were given the people for, you know, so they could stay home with the pandemic was a lot greater than what they could make in the farm. And we lost all the workers due to that. And they're still not coming around, so we do have a problem.
There wound up being deaths in the family, and you know, there was deaths from friends. And
if I knew a pandemic was going to hit, we probably wouldn't have opened a cheese factory.
It's really hard to see people coming in here with tears streaming down their faces saying, I never thought I would ever come here.
When I went to the grocery store and saw the shelves were bare because people were panic buying, I was terrified. I was really worried that there wasn't going to be enough food for people.
We never faced a moment in time when we had a volunteer shortage. We were turning volunteers away.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it was a kind of profitable year, the year that the pandemic hit, because we were one of the only games in town.
Our pigs and cows are all out in the woods and on pasture, so we kept the same grain rations, and we're pretty far out, we're pretty isolated, so life kind of went on as normal for us.
The pandemic did affect us a bit, but not as much as you would think.
Our workforce size didn't change at all during the pandemic. Nobody was laid off. In fact, we ended up having to add people.
What we saw at the farmers market and here at the mobile market as an increase in demand for local products because there wasn't any other option. So our sales at the farmers market actually doubled during the pandemic.
We kept smaller groups, so if somebody did get sick, we were able to keep them quarantined, you know, as a group, and it didn't affect the rest of the labor force. So it was managed pretty well, and we made it through it pretty well.
People were lining up in our driveway here wanting to get meat.
The farmers market became really important to people. They saw the shortages in the stores. They made extra effort to be there. They made effort to buy more while they were there.
Our life didn't really change a whole lot because we don't ever let fear rule our life. We have a hope. And so we held on to that hope. And our faith was challenged, but I knew that God would take this and use it for good. And I've seen so much evidence of that already.
We really didn't suffer too bad. We did have a few labor contract delays, but the ultimate end of the game, I would say we had a reasonable year based on everybody was kind of fluxing and changing and trying to kind of improvise on what they had done in the past.
Although many farmers claim to be unaffected by the pandemic, the empty shelves and high prices from the grocery stores, resulting from supply chain and workforce issues, tell a very different story for the food system as a whole. So did COVID-19 actually land a devastating blow to our food system? Or is our system so resilient that we need only endure temporary setbacks before fully rebounding from any disruption? The truth may very well lie somewhere in the middle.
It's really that I want to draw your attention to. In Western New York, we have a couple of million people that depend on the food system. But we also have 300,000 people that are in poverty. Reality is different for Black and brown and indigenous people, and we need to really see that.
But to know just how resilient our food system really is, we must first understand it.
All the processes to grow and make food to feed a community and care for the land is called a food system. Typically, there are 5 components of a food system: production, processing, distribution, consumption, and waste management, which also includes land regeneration. There was once a time when local communities largely fed themselves.
Farms and communities were connected by the food that was grown and sold locally on land that was locally owned and cared for, oftentimes by multiple generations of families. But with the invention of refrigerated railway cars in the late 1800s, produce and other perishables could be shipped across the country. And as preservation methods, transportation, and engineering technology advanced, so too did the boundaries of our food systems, eventually allowing for the global trading of commodities, and hence the global food system was born. But as you'll hear many times throughout this series, the general consensus is that what we need now is to return to our dependence on local and regional food systems because of how vulnerable the global food system is to disruptions and how damaging it is to our ecosystems. And to avoid confusion, it's important to note that local food systems are contained within regional food systems, and usually there's no clear demarcation of local systems by things like town or county lines, but only that, according to the USDA, local foods are marketed through direct sales to consumers through avenues like CSAs, farmers markets, grocery stores, restaurants, schools, and other outlets, and mainly benefit the local economy where you live. Production involves all the activities and resources needed to grow food for human consumption. For production to be efficient, responsible, and viable, we must ensure that people have equal access to the land needed to grow food, or the animals that will become food, and that the land is being cared for or treated in ways that promote good soil health and stewardship for sustainability.
Masco Homestead Farms.
James Masco, they call me Kink. I was raised on a dairy farm, and so, I mean, farming's been in my background all my life.
Being around animals, raising animals has been in my background since I've been 5 years old, actually. I started out with horses. My husband and I, started our farming business as kind of a hobby to provide, for ourselves, homesteading type thing.
When we first started, it was small. We only had 53 acres. Now we've grown. I mean, we had a handful of cattle. Now we've got over 100. We had one tractor and one piece of machinery of each, a mower, a baler, a rake. And now we have 5, 6 tractors and newfangled machinery, and it's been fun the whole time, and it's still fun.
We primarily raise grass-finished Angus beef and pasture-raised pigs. We're a true farm-to-table business. We raise all of our animals here on the farm. They're born here on the farm. We also do vegetables as well for mainly our own use, but we will take extra overflow produce to the farmers markets to sell.
The Masco Homestead is one of over 6,000 small farms in western New York. And with meat as their main commodity, they're also a part of the largest segment of agriculture in the U.S. But despite producing a product in such high demand, the Mascos, and quite frankly many small family farms just like theirs, aren't exactly laughing all the way to the bank. Globalization, which is the term used to describe the increasing connectedness and interdependence of world cultures and economies, has basically forced the price of commodities and inputs to unsustainable levels for small farmers.
It has gotten harder over the years. I mean, we're making less than we were like 10, 15 years ago for the same amount of work and effort, because all the inputs are costing more, labor's costing more, and it's harder to do it, We were established in 1984. We actually started out as we thought we would be more of a nursery business, like instead of growing fruits and vegetables, but our first crops ended up being strawberries to try to get some seed money so we could get the rest going. And we found that when we grew the strawberry fields and some of the first crops that we grew, that the marketing was pretty easy down here because people were looking for it.
I'm Adam Abers. I'm their son. I help out on the farm. I do a lot of the field work with my dad and whatever else needs done on the farm, just different things. So over at my house I have poultry, chickens, and ducks and stuff like that. So, and I actually like growing out different fruit and nut trees. So I don't know, I still like it.
When we started, I was probably more enthusiastic about it, but made a lot more mistakes and learned as we went along. And I do love the process of farming. It just seems like it's kind of like overwhelming right now at this point in my life.
There's policies I'd like to see changed. I'd like to see it like, so just like, we don't raise dairy, but it would be nice to see, like, especially in New York State, be able to have like retail outlets like this, be able to carry raw milk and things like that, where it's restricted, and different states have different rules. I just think for small farms it would be nice to have the restrictions off of that.
Small farms in Western New York make up a vital part of our local economy and are a part of the type of regional food system that many people ended up having to turn to during the height of the pandemic. And while there are indeed many strengths in our region's food system, there are also many ongoing issues that preceded COVID-19.
It's been on a tightrope for a very long time. It's never been sustainable, and it's only gotten farther away from sustainability. And what happens is, if there's one disruption in the supply chain, people go hungry. We need to go back to the small farms and back to one farm feeding 20 or 30 families. So I run the farm store, and then I'm also in charge of vegetable production, and we're starting some berries and things like that.
When I was a child, it was it was an agrarian society, so there were many small farms, and they were diverse farms. So things are so specialized now that typically there's one major crop that carries the income stream for a farmer. The biggest challenge that we have in our food system is that it's very brittle. Yeah, it's easily broken, and last year during COVID, the shelves were empty of meat. The farmers were producing the meat, but the supply chain was too long, so we need to get local food back available to the public. You know, it's amazing the pressures a global food system puts on small family farms. But I believe that the only sustainable way is going to be local food, and small family farms are going to connect with the consumers, and we're already seeing a turnaround in that realm.
While right-to-farm laws and the National Farm Bill have sought to help farmers continue to produce and shore up regional food systems, the reality is that small farms have oftentimes been treated as dispensable. And as such, they've had to bear the burden of many crippling disadvantages, both natural and manufactured. Approximately 20% of New York's land area, or nearly 7 million acres, is farmland. And with over 33,000 family farms helping to drive the economy, New York is a major agricultural state, ranking in the top 10 in production of over 30 commodities, with dairy being the largest segment of the state's agricultural sector. But New York State has lost over 500,000 acres of farmland since the 1980s. And over the past 20 years, more than 11 million acres have been lost in the United States.
Western New York offers prime land and resources for food production, which is seen in the diversity of food produced from this region. But like many rural areas, farmland is under threat from residential or commercial development. The loss of land for agriculture means the loss of local food production and ultimately the loss of money made and recirculated in the area.
The loss of farmland is a consequence of difficulties ranging from the uncontrollable, like climate change, to discriminatory lending policies that have been affecting minority farmers for decades.
We came in 1969, June 11, and there were 13 of us and the family, so we all went to pick strawberry for Rosa Joy. And when we all worked together, my father was bringing home $1,000 a week versus $27 that we used to make in Puerto Rico. You know, it intrigued me to want to become a farmer because that was money. So in 1990, Rosa Joy, he sold me one farm and a handshake, 47 acres, and that was the beginning of me wanting to become a farmer. Well, we used to deal with Clifton and now become Refresco, that's my hat. And we used to take on 3,500 tons a year. And one year they just came down and told me they only wanted 800 tons. The reason was they were buying grape from California and they were mixing it with ours. They call it the 49-51. 49% of theirs, 51% of ours. That was a lie. They were just buying the grapes so cheap over there, already pressed into juice. So we were going under. We had about 600 acres, and I had to keep downsizing. And I went down to 300 acres. That's where we are right now. Every year, the price of the grapes going down to the bottom. Take $1,500 an acre to run an acre of grape. They're paying us $750. So we just keep borrowing money and use all the collateral that we had. Now we're just flat down to the limit. Every obstacle comes along with me not having a loan with FSA. So every time we apply, we get denied because it's just the way of the law, I guess. I'm thinking of trying to sell some farm just to pay up the debt and keep going. You gotta do what you can to stay in business.
The obstacles encountered by small farmers like Roberto Fred are validated by the findings of the Food Future Western New York initiative, which states that small farms are struggling with long-term disinvestment and a wavering public commitment to address racial justice. And these findings are further upheld by research from the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, which reveals 50 years of predatory and discriminatory policies and practices by the USDA.
I think I have to take you back 20, 30 years. When we know for a fact that socially disadvantaged producers were discriminated against by the United States Department of Agriculture. We know this. When you look at the COVID relief packages that had been passed and distributed by USDA prior to the American Rescue Plan, and you take a look at who disproportionately received the benefits of those COVID payments, it's pretty clear that white farmers did pretty well under that program because of the way it was structured. It's structured on size and structured on production.
Dave Zittel from Amos Zittel & Sons, fourth generation farmer. Our farm started back in the 1800s. We run about 350 acres of vegetables, about 3 acres of greenhouses, and we used to, as of a year ago, own a retail market for 30 plus years. So we're in production right from start to finish. It used to be much more mom and pop. We grew things like radishes and parsley and peas. We now grow less crops, but more acres of those crops. We used to think that a 3 truckload day down to the Clinton Valley market was big, and that would be 600 containers. Now, if we're not doing 3,000 to 5,000 containers a day, we're not having a good day. Yes, there has been climate change. No, I don't know the answer of why and how and all the environmental portions of it, but I think that overall it's actually benefited us. We have a very short growing season here. I think most people would say that we're trending warmer, not colder. So with that being said, our springs are a little earlier, our falls are a little later. So that extension of season has actually helped us more than hurt us.
There is truth to the fact that warming temperatures can benefit some of the more drought-tolerant crops in certain regions and extend growing seasons in colder climates. And crops like rice and wheat can thrive from higher carbon dioxide concentrations. But generally speaking, climate change is not only a major driver of land loss, but according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the increase in natural disasters like droughts, floods, storms, and wildfires due to climate change are causing billions in crop and livestock losses every year. Workforce issues can severely hamper the production potential of small farms. And while COVID-19 does factor into some of the current workforce issues, there are more complicated reasons for the steady decline. For example, with so many initiatives geared at making higher learning more accessible, the result is an expansion of job opportunities in many other fields, making it very rare for younger people to choose farming over more enticing alternatives. The fact is that without something like the H-2A program, which allows for farmers to hire foreign laborers on a temporary basis, the workforce issue would be much worse. As it stands, H-2A workers make up an estimated 10% of the U.S. crop farm workforce. Of course, for farmers who can't find locals to employ, some of the requirements for them to use the H-2A visa program are very complex and can be prohibitive. Another emerging threat that gives rise to the disappearance of small farms and impacting production is the aging out of farmers who don't have a succession plan for keeping their farms going.
We have, 2 children, but they cannot work the farm. So if we both died, something would have to be done. And we don't have plans like that, unfortunately, figured out.
I got 5 kids, 2 boys and 3 girls. There's nobody with the love or the ambition of being a farmer. Farming is a challenge. You depend on the Lord to make it or break it.
We're kind of getting to that stage in our life where we need to figure out a succession plan, but it's hard to find somebody. Like, my son doesn't exactly want to take the whole reins of it, but I don't know if some kind of an employee-owned co-op or something like that would work. Those are hard questions, and it's something we are in the process of trying to start to navigate now, but we don't know the answer. We'll probably need help when we get more serious about that. So.
The average age of farmers in the U.S. is around 57 years. But according to the USDA in a 2021 editorial, 26% of beginning farmers are under the age of 35, and beginning farmers account for 29% of U.S. farms. So to offset the decline in family farms due to aging farmers, more beginning farmers need to take up the reins. But there are obstacles that are getting in the way of that, and one of them is access.
Many young farmers can't access the capital needed to purchase land and farms, so they enter into leasing agreements that don't always guarantee long-term options or even a pathway to ownership. The lack of security is a very distracting burden and most certainly a deterrent to young farmers going into farming as a career. Creating pathways for young or emerging farmers to land and infrastructure that's available and affordable is probably the best strategy on which to build all the other efforts to strengthen our region's food system.
Natural soil erosion from wind and water is exacerbated by poor agricultural practices like deforestation, monocropping, and tilling. These methods deprive the soil of nutrients and can result in higher rates of runoff, causing the soil to deteriorate to the point where the land can no longer be cultivated. It's unfortunate that poor agricultural practices and deficient policies meant to boost production actually contribute to the land loss, climate change, and aging farming population that in turn have a dire effect on production.
The processing phase in a food system happens when raw products like vegetables, milk, or animals are transformed into new food products that are ready for the consumer to prepare and consume. In New York State, much of how food processing is done is highly regulated at all points to ensure consumer and worker safety.
The southwest region of New York State has a significant history in dairy processing. Today, the region is still a significant supplier of raw fluid cow's milk with nearly 400 dairy farms in Allegheny, Cattaraugus, and Chautauqua counties alone, providing milk to large processing plants and small farmstead creameries.
My name's Connor O'Gorman. I'm in charge of all the herd health and genetic selection of the dairy cattle. We're at Eden Valley Farms. It's a multi-generational dairy farm. We have segments of organic dairy and conventional dairy. The vast majority of our business is wholesale raw fluid milk and goes into commodity markets sold to upstate farms. The new segment of our business, Eden Valley Creamery, we specialize in locally produced artisan organic cheeses. We make 3 types of aged cheeses. Or is that 5 types of aged cheeses, Emily? Could be 5. 5. And 6 types of fresh cheddar cheese curds. Then we have 2 other locations. We have Southern Tier Organics in Sinclairville, Chautauqua Hilltop Organic in Cassadaga. And then our main dairy is up in Eden, and that's the conventional site. One of the things they say is the better you take care of a cow, the better the cow will take care of you. And it's really true, the more effort and money you put into making that cow happy and healthy, the more milk it produces. And since we sell milk as the majority of our business, the better we look out for and care for our animals, it in turn helps our bottom line. So we grow in-house all of our forages needed to feed the dairy cattle. So we'll grow field corn as well as clover for haylage, and we grow some row crops for concentrates like soybean and some winter triticale. Clover is very good for the environment and the animal. Clover fixates nitrogen back into the soil with little nodules, as well as being beneficial for the cow. It's very high in protein, and the more protein the animals can intake themselves off of pasture, the less that we have to supplement with purchased protein source. I'd say our role in the food system is close to essential as there can be, since we're at the bottom of the food pyramid as the producer, making the raw product. I would say we in fact are one of the most important in the food system.
It's impossible to argue against any statement that touts the importance of farmers to the food system. And for dairy farmers in New York State who are paying attention to the numbers, they are very much aware of their worth. In 2021, the agriculture industry in New York State produced $3.3 billion in gross domestic product. And with milk being the state's largest agricultural commodity, dairy farmers' contribution to the state's GDP surpasses that of any other agri-sector. But in spite of the outstanding performance from New York's dairy farmers over the years, they still face issues that other farmers have to contend with, plus some that are unique to the dairy industry. Perhaps with the 2018 Farm Bill expiring in September of 2023, and dairy reform being a priority of our representative on the Senate Agriculture Committee, relief for certain disruptions to the dairy industry may be forthcoming.
There are not many businesses where people do back-breaking labor 7 days a week and come out financially worse for their trouble. The pricing system simply does not work for America's hardworking dairy farmers. As I met with farmers from across New York State, I saw the absolute anguish and despair on their faces as they showed me their balance books that simply did not add up.
When farm products are undervalued, it not only leaves farmers struggling to make ends meet, but also has a direct effect on their ability to secure a skilled workforce.
The agricultural segment in general is a high-hour field, and given it's a high-hour field, it's not a lower wage, but a modest wage due to the amount of hours. Some of our biggest challenges are certainly labor. Attracting qualified and talented people can be difficult. But once we hone in on the correct person, we tend to keep employees because of a quality work environment and benefits along with the fact they recognize they're producing an important product.
We're going to head into the processing room and see part of the cheese making process. So each morning we get milk fresh from the farm and we pump it into this vat. We are ripening the milk. We added cultures to the milk that drop the acidity a little bit, and it gives it flavor for later on in the cheese making process. So the cultures, the calcium chloride and the rennet are all processing aids. So this is going to start the coagulation process. First we have to still the milk because if we keep it agitating, then it will kind of break apart what we're coagulating. So the next step in the process is going to be cutting the curds. It'll coagulate to kind of a yogurt texture, and we'll see a clean break is what it's called. Then we can cut the curds. So we put the harp in there so it's ready to cut. So I write down each process, the time, the temperature, what's added. We keep track of all the lot numbers in case there's ever a recall or a quality concern. You can track back where you got those different ingredients.
Whether it's the processing of dairy or some other commodity in preparation for distribution, it is clear that many of the disruptions that affect production also affects processing. One of the biggest challenges in food processing in the region impacts the farmers growing animals for meat production. There is an extreme lack of USDA slaughter facilities within a 3 to 4 hour drive of western New York. A USDA facility is required when animals are processed and sold directly to the consumer in individual retail packages. Animal farmers report backlogs of up to 2 years to book animals for processing. To most animal farmers, this is a crisis. If they can't process their animals, they can't reap the financial return on their farming efforts, and that threatens their ability to keep their farms operational.
Our butcher, we have to have a USDA inspected butcher as well as certified organic, which means we drive 2 hours one way and we book our butcher dates a year in advance, and you cannot get in if you need another. So that's definitely been a challenge.
But it's a challenge that farm owners Elizabeth and Greg Putney saw as an opportunity. Faced with the same bottleneck delays that neighboring farmers were dealing with, instead of falling in line and accepting this reality, they took action.
My name's Greg Putney. This is my wife Elizabeth. We own and operate Rise Swine Farm and Alliance Farm Butchery in Holland, New York. We are roughly a 120 acre operation, all regenerative based, pasture based model. Our operation entails retail, production, and processing. My uncle used to raise pigs, and the one year he said he was not going to raise them. So we raised 2 pigs that first year, and then everybody found out that we raised pigs, and we started slowly selling more and more. And now we're at a full-time operation. There's a lot of farm tours that we do through here. and that brings a lot of the general population out so we can give a chance to educate them and see kind of a different way of farming.
Our farm business has really exploded since 2019, just because people didn't know where to get meat and they turned to Facebook, and somebody started a Find Your Farmer Facebook group that got us a lot of attention and more customers. We have not been able to keep up.
No, we've doubled production, and we're anticipating for 2023 we're going to double again. About 15 months ago, we decided we were going to put our own processing facility to feed into our retail sector. That's all been finalized, inspected, and everything through the state. And we are currently working on completing a USDA on-farm slaughter floor, and that will end up feeding the commercial kitchen and the processing on-farm.
We don't use those big slaughterhouses that were closed down, but we definitely saw an increase in the demand in local, smaller slaughterhouses, and it made it really hard to get in. Just seeing that is what made us actually start to build our own butcher shop and go the route of building our own slaughterhouse, because we wanted to be able to take control over everything for our business and to help the other local farms too who face the same issue. We have a list of neighboring farms who have been calling and emailing, asking about butcher dates well before it was even built. So we're hearing pretty much every day from other farms hoping to get in. We are going to be doing member fees for those farms that want to do retail cuts. With that fee, that gives them access to the kitchen, our equipment, and our employees, and then they're guaranteed to get processing done within a month, ideally. Whereas going other places, a lot of times waits are a year or 2 years.
Our goal this year is to finish around 140 pigs. We're gonna do 1,200 meat chickens this year, and next year we're gonna triple our sows, and we're shooting for 300 finished pigs next year for retail sale.
The only way that we are able to grow our farm is if we have secured processing, and this is the way that we saw that we had to do it. It's a game changer.
For right now, the plan is to make efficient the butcher shop and the processing side of it, and then with the 20C model, possible replication of that in other locations, whether it be Western New York or Central New York, to help the other farmers in that area as well.
And I think it's hard to make a profit farming the more traditional way. I think you have to be kind of creative and maybe have a retail store, you know. There's
find that niche
especially
market.
dairy farmers where they're totally, it depends on what milk prices are going for, and a lot of times they're selling their milk at a loss because that's what the milk prices are, and it's, I don't know.
Greg and Elizabeth's resolve is a great example of the can-do attitude that farmers in Western New York oftentimes have to rely upon to help them overcome their many challenges. And it's that type of enterprising spirit that policymakers would do well to take heed of. Or maybe, as rare as it may be, this time, they've actually been paying attention. In July of 2021, the USDA announced its intent to invest $500 million in American Rescue Plan funds to expand meat and poultry processing capacity. And that spawned a $5 million grant program from the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets to assist with the expansion and modernization of meat processing facilities. So while our processing problems won't be solved by simply increasing capacity, it is certainly a step in the right direction.
The distribution part of a food system involves all the ways that food moves from where it's produced or processed to the consumer. Several challenges exist in the region's food system distribution element, Chief among them is the lack or aging of infrastructure and also the inequity of food access points. One of the biggest obstacles in the movement of food, especially food grown in the southwestern area of Western New York, is the inefficient means to collect food from small farms and then move it to hubs or distribution centers.
I'm Dave Walzak, the sales, or can we start again? Sorry. Dave Walzak, the operations manager for Eden Valley Growers. Eden Valley Growers was formed back in 1956, and basically there was a group of 30 or so farmers in the Eden, Hamburg, Brant area. All went to the market, Buffalo market on their own. Friends, neighbors, family. Decided that one grower is really good at growing peppers, one's really good at growing cukes, one's good at growing corn, so forth. And they decided, well, let's see if we can get a marketing company together that would sell our goods for us and make our jobs a little bit easier. We're now 10 members instead of the 30 so members back then, but we're farming many more acres, 2,000 plus acres, more efficiently, getting a lot more packages out of the acre because of the methods that they use and such. Any box that comes in would be considered a package. So 100,000 packages back in 1956 has increased to over 600,000 packages now. About 40% of it stays in the Western New York area, and the remaining, there's probably 20% or so that go to other parts of New York State, including New York City, and the remaining will be shipped out of the area. We go down to South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. We're sales, we're marketing, we're distribution, we're cooling. We're the guys that are making it go to the places it needs to go and making sure our growers are getting paid what they need to get paid. Up here in the Northeast, we're competing against all the states around us. And when you're competing against states that aren't on the same level maybe as you are with some of their costs and inputs and labor, it can be pretty demanding, pretty hard sometimes. We employ, out of all of our farms, over 500, 600 people. Unfortunately, the labor here in New York State, they've already changed our laws as far as what our workers can work. There's a 60, after they hit 60 hours now in New York State, they do get paid overtime. The states around us don't have that same limitation. There's being more push to change that even further to 50 hours or 40 hours, and it is gradually going that way over the next 10 years. I think if that's the direction we're going, it has to be more on a federal side. So that would mean all the states around us would have that same limitation, and that puts the playing field more even. You know, it's difficult without that playing field being even. You know, going into this season, things have increased exponentially. Fertilizer costs are up 50%. Our containers that we pack in are up 35 to 40%. Field plastics are up 25 to 30%. So there's consumers, at least after COVID, post-COVID, they don't like people touching their stuff as much. So the retailers are asking us to do more packaging and more value-added items. Freight, fuel, anything that goes into any supply or anybody supplying product to the general public and not so general public. I mean, it's become very difficult for everybody. Yeah. It might seem, that product or food is expensive right now, but believe me, it's not us raising the expenses. It's the result of what's going into growing that product that's raising the expense. If peppers are $10 everywhere else and we want to be 15, we're not going to sell peppers. As much as everybody wants to support local and they want, support their local farmer, they're going to say, yeah, I really want your stuff, but I can get it here for $10. And they're really not that far away either. They're only 200 miles away or 150 miles away, so it's all market driven.
What are you proudest of when it comes to the co-op?
It's always where I get choked up. I'm proud of our grower organization, just because the hard work that they do goes to people that are, looking for local, and I knowing that the same product that I'm eating, that I'm putting on my family's table, and that my kids, they go to school and say, my dad is a farmer. I don't know why I get so choked up, and we don't put this in there, or parts of it, whatever. It's like I'm working for my family, and knowing that I'm doing good.
It's nice to see that you're passionate about it.
It's the passion, yeah.
More and more of the food that we consume tends to be provided by remote producers that utilize a vast and expansive distribution network. So we often hear the term food miles, which is the tally of the distance a food product has traveled to reach a consumer at its point of consumption.
Food is traveling so far. I have one example I like to give is we're in New York. And Oregon. New York and Oregon are the two largest apple producing states in the country. And New York sends apples to Oregon, and Oregon sends apples to New York. That is a very large problem to me in our country, in the world. We need to get back to a local food system and stop wasting our natural resources, our fuels, on transporting products that are produced right here.
In the U.S., the average distance a processed product travels to the consumer is 1,300 miles, where fresh produce is 1,500 miles. The effort, energy, and cost of distributing food in the global food system far outweighs that of sourcing our food locally, not to mention the fact that localized food systems primarily benefit local economies.
Farm in Allegheny, New York. I've transitioned from a business job to farming 22 years ago when I was told that I was too concerned about customers' needs. We are vegetable producers. We produce over 45 different vegetables. We do this year-round using season extension, and we also market our product direct to the consumer. As the years have gone by, we have found that we cover our costs, and that's about it. Most of our infrastructure is gotten through grants and donations. So we are breaking even. How long this will take place, it's hard to say.
I eat 2 a day between my wife and me. I get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, I gotta have something good to eat.
We have been able to get a good workforce. We could always use more, but it takes a special kind of person to do this type of work. And that's what we have here. They fully understand the intrinsic rewards of doing a hard day's labor.
Hello, Mrs. Brody.
Hi there.
Is there anything I can help you find?
I think I'm good. I always find everything beautiful.
All right.
Here.
Good.
and we always like to experiment with crops. We do evaluate them at the end of the season, see if they were profitable or not, and if there's a demand for them. We have a farm stand and a local farmers market that we distribute at only 2 days out of the week. The thing I'm most proud of with this farm is the difference that we've made in our community. Through feeding people, through just associating with the community, through the people who've worked here, we've touched many lives. We don't need to feed people in Buffalo or Rochester. I'm interested in our community and feeding our community. So I think the fact that we've made a difference in this community is the biggest thing I'm proud of. There's a lot of uncontrollable factors out there. If I spend all my time worrying about those uncontrollable factors, I'm gonna drive myself crazy. So I control what I can. Why are we entrusting other countries with our food supply? We should be producing our own food. We shouldn't be depending upon other countries to be feeding us. As far as regulations, it has really hampered us because we are small scale, direct to the consumer. We're not selling to grocery stores. We're not selling to institutions. We're selling to the people who are consuming the food. Farmers have a hard enough time producing the product. Most of them don't want to take it to the market and do the full 9 yards. We happen to. We need someone to pull farmers together, to pull marketplaces together, educate the consumer to create demand. Oh, if I had to do this all over again, I probably would have started a little bit earlier than 37. So that's my only regret.
Repeatedly hearing about problems with the different parts of the food system has caused many people to become desensitized to the issues, while even more have resigned themselves to thinking that nothing can be done about any of it anyway. So why bother? But that sort of indifference usually comes from people who believe that these problems have no real-world consequences for them. They are healthy, happy, and well-fed, so they tune it all out. But there is a cost to turning a blind eye. And the COVID-19 pandemic made us painfully aware of that reality. Because we have started depending so heavily on a global food system, we can all succumb to its malfunctions at any time. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, there's enough food being produced on the planet to feed 10 billion people. So why then do we have over 828 million people going hungry when the world population just hit 8 billion in 2022? The logical conclusion is that problems with distribution is keeping a lot of the food being produced from getting into the hands of many consumers. And that is mostly true, but it's a bit more complicated than that. The fact is, the most harmful disruptions to distribution, like labor shortages, the increased cost of inputs, failing infrastructure, and poor storage, are actually side effects of ineffective policies from lawmakers who have been out of touch with producers for far too long. Even the biggest drivers of hunger, like war and conflict and poverty, can be traced back to failed policies. So it's only natural to conclude that to effect the biggest changes, we need to start at the top.
This stage of the food system affects all people. After all, we all eat. We hold the power to shape our local food system, our land uses, and farming practices simply by what we choose to eat and where we choose to purchase our food. This is the strong participation point where consumers can break the dependence on the global food supply by consistently choosing locally produced or locally sourced food.
Let's take a trip. We'll travel to a country where over 30 million people experience food insecurity every day, with over 9 million of those being children. Oh, Wait, we may have overshot our destination. Let's back up a bit. And we're here. Surprised? Well, it's true. According to the USDA, over 34 million Americans have trouble accessing good, healthy food on a consistent basis. Even though America is not only one of the wealthiest nations on earth, but also the third largest food-producing country in the world, and the third largest generator of food waste on the planet. That's right, every year an estimated 73 to 152 million metric tons of food is lost or wasted in the U.S. between production and consumption. That's almost 40% of the U.S. food supply being discarded annually, taking up an estimated 24% of space in U.S. landfills. To put that in perspective, it means that we waste enough food every year to feed 150 million people for the entire year. So the truth is that the 35 million Americans who experience food insecurity could be taken care of for a fraction of the food we discard. So why exactly do we have this problem of food insecurity? Well, first, let's define the term. Food insecurity is the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or limited or uncertain ability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways, according to the USDA. To put it simply, when healthy food is hard to obtain, that is usually because of food insecurity. But what can make healthy food hard to obtain? Well, there are several reasons. Poverty, unemployment, low income, chronic health conditions, systemic racism and discrimination, accessibility, and unaffordable housing. On September 16, 2015, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Environmental Protection Agency announced the U.S. 2030 Food Loss and Waste Reduction Goal. The goal seeks to cut food loss and waste in half by the year 2030. It's encouraging to see such steps being taken to help solve this issue of food insecurity. But other entities are playing a very significant role in the fight against food insecurity and hunger. Without them, the situation would be much worse.
My name is Sega Bryce, and I am the Workforce Development Coordinator for the RISE program at Feedmore, Western New York. RISE stands for Readying Individuals for Successful Employment. And what we realized during the pandemic was that a lot of individuals who were affected had to make choices. And because of the loss of employment or reduction in employment, that also affected their ability to buy food and to get healthy food choices for their families. So what my program does, or the program of the agency does, is that we provide free training for these individuals to get certifications for their OSHA, their Serve Safe food handlers, for the certified logistics and training for forklift and warehouse and logistics distribution, so that they can become mid-level employees and get to a higher wage and have some hands-on experience to get them into a higher wage bracket. We know with the increase in inflation and the decrease in the living wage, or no movement on the living wage, individuals are having a hard time providing for their families.
I think that something people don't recognize about food insecurity is that it's not just people who live in the extremes and have no food at all. It's many families in our community who live close to the poverty line, who are maybe paycheck to paycheck, and spending a little more on a gallon of gas or spending a little bit more on baby formula week over week adds up for them and ultimately digs them a much deeper financial hole. And so I think having Feed More available in the community as a safety net for families who might have to choose between something like a prescription and food on the table is hugely valuable. And those people who exist in this space in between extremes still need a lot of support. And I think that we're going to find following the pandemic, that's the group of people that we end up serving the most, because they're going to be people who are affected by things like inflation, things like job loss, who maybe haven't felt the greatest impact during the pandemic, but will continue to experience a ripple effect afterwards.
Feedmore is the result of a merger between the Food Bank of Western New York and Meals on Wheels for Western New York. Feed More was created and became legally effective on January 1 of 2020. We serve Erie, Niagara, Cattaraugus, and Chautauqua counties, and across those counties, we provide services that include things like mobile pantry, which is basically a pantry without walls. We have farm market trucks that distribute food across the communities where we serve. We serve everybody from babies for diaper programs, formula, baby food, backpacks for children in elementary schools. We have high school and college pantries. We serve food pantries, soup kitchens, and we do things like home delivered meals for clients that cannot get out of their homes, safely prepare or procure foods, and community dining sites, otherwise known as congregate dining, where individuals 60 years of age or older can come and eat. We have an Animeals program to make sure our cats and dogs are able to have something to eat. And we also are doing our own growing. We have a community garden, we have container farms. We receive donations through USDA, TFAB, HIPNAP. We receive food from large-scale food drives, things like Stamp Out Hunger, or even an individual, a child perhaps, holding a birthday party where he gathers food from his party and brings it to us. We are open to donations as well as procurement, and we really do want to always work to ensure that when we're purchasing as local as we can to help support our farmers, rural and urban as well. I cannot say enough about how much the USDA innovation programs have meant for Feed More Western New York. It really is a mutually supportive process of them giving us the funds and allowing us the luxury to reach out to rural and urban farmers. So their boat is rising, Feed More does not have to raise or spend as much money, and most importantly, that food from the farmers is ending up right where it belongs, in the homes, in the hands, and in the tummies of those that would otherwise be facing hunger across Western New York and all across New York State. Whatever is resulting in food insecurity is where we as an organization come in to fill that gap. We really are striving to make sure we are feeding the line and working to implement projects and processes to shorten the line as well. We serve about 180,000 people each year, but each one of those 180,000 individuals has a story, and that to me is the most important part of the work that we do. A guidance counselor from a local school came up to me and said, "I need you to help me with something. I have a student, she's 16 years old. She has a sister who's 15 and a sister who's 13. Dad died in 2020. Mom just died a couple months ago. And they had to go live with Grandpa. Grandpa's had a series of strokes, so he's okay. He's mentally with it, but he's not physically on the top of his game, so he needs some help too. Right now, they're helping Grandpa with his meals, and they're eating dinners at friends when they can because they have no money. They talked to a local government department, and they were told that if Grandpa can't care for you properly, you're all going to be taken into foster care. At which point, these children are frankly terrified. She was going to quit school because she didn't think she could juggle being a high school student and taking care of Grandpa. And she didn't want to lose her younger sisters. She's faced nothing but trauma and loss. Why would they want to call Feed More or ask anybody else for help when potentially the only stability that they have can be taken away from them in a moment, just like their parents were? Because she came and talked to me, we came together and found a solution for each of them. And that even included our social work team coming together to get school supplies for these kids. They brought them school supplies so that they had a running start. I don't know, that's why we do the work that we do here every day. And I don't know, I guess it goes to that question of what I love about Feed More. It goes beyond just making sure they have something to eat. It's making sure they're taken care of every day.
And I am the Nutrition, Education, and Outreach Coordinator for the Olean Food Pantry. The Olean Food Pantry started 54 years ago handing out food to people from a church. It has expanded to almost a community center that provides whatever folks need. We do provide food. We also provide sanitary items, we do baby food, we do pet food, we do whatever it is, but we are primarily a food pantry and distribute food to the community. We serve between 75 and 100 families every day that we're open. We're open 2 days a week, but people can come as frequently as they need to. So the exact numbers are a little vague. I think we're at every spot in the food system because we purchase food, we distribute food, we grow food, we have our own gardens. We have 75 raised bed gardens, and half of those are adopted by community members. The other half are our gardens that we raise food for our customers. So I think we kind of do it all. After the pandemic, well, it's not over yet, but as it decreased, we learned that there are still people who can't get to the food pantry. Maybe because of mobility issues, maybe because of transportation issues, which is a big, big deal around here. Transportation's a big problem. So we now do home deliveries, and we will continue to do those. We had an issue with the local transportation system where our customers were not being permitted to take their shopping carts onto the bus. And the only reason that these people come on the bus is to get food. So made some phone calls and met with the county and with the Oates bus system, and they are now permitted to take shopping carts on the bus. So it was a big deal. This took a long time to get to who we needed to get to, but they were very, very cooperative, and we're really happy about it. And today will be our first day where we can actually tell the bus driver, yes, we can take those carts. The vibe in this building and the spirit in this building is just something that you will not find, certainly not in any commercial supermarket. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, is the people that we have and the way we work with people. Food prices are so high, gas prices are so high, and we're seeing people we've never seen before. And my response to that is sometimes you need help and sometimes you give help. We have now the Farm to Families program, which New York State purchases food from farmers and then donates it to food banks. So the farmers are getting paid and we're getting food. I think that for us it makes more sense to go back to more local purveyors and not so much factory farm kind of things, because that chain can get broken very easily. Locally, it's a little easier to change direction than it is in a factory. When there's a whole lot of negative stuff going on, when I come in here, I feel like I really am making a difference. I see people's lives being changed. I see people going from not having enough food to growing their own food. And things like that, it's just immeasurable. But every day that I'm here, I feel nourished.
Do you have an ultimate goal for your organization?
To go out of business. We want everybody to have food and not need us.
We're, here at the Jamestown Public Market, and today was a wonderful day. The weather's beautiful, and it's just so much fun to be here every Saturday with the community. We have so many wonderful agricultural producers, growers, value-added product creators, crafters, right here in Western New York. And I don't think that a lot of people really think about where their food comes from. And so we're really excited that every Saturday we get to invite those farmers and creators here to downtown Jamestown. We're just always asking people to be mindful about where they get their food from and who grew that food and how long did it take to travel from the farm to their plate, and is there a way for them to get that food more locally in a way that's better for the environment, more nutritionally dense, supporting their local economy. There's just so many things that go into building a successful food system, and it's important that we remember that. So many of my friends live right here at Covenant Manor in the Hotel Jamestown, which is low-income senior housing, and we're able to provide them with healthy food access right at their doorstep.
So we saw a lot of food insecurity here in the city of Jamestown, food deserts and other activities that really made it difficult for people that were living in apartments, that were living in congregate settings, to get the fresh food, vegetables, and things that they needed to survive. When you add a pandemic and some depression and loneliness to it, it made it a very difficult piece. So to have a public market, a mobile market, and an organization dedicated to helping the community was really key to helping us deal with food scarcity, food deserts, and really food equity here in the city of Jamestown.
We're here at Abers Acres to pick up the produce for today, and that's for our mobile market program. So we just loaded up all of the produce for both the mobile market day that we're about to embark on, as well as our CSA program, or Community Supported Agriculture Program, where individuals can buy a share. And we also pick up for the Office of the Aging's local Roots program. So we distribute produce to senior living centers across Jamestown. The last 5 years we've been utilizing either a pickup truck or an SUV with a small trailer. And so we've been able to expand our program this year, almost double the CSA share, and definitely expand the amount of produce that we can distribute throughout the city of Jamestown because of this new vehicle that we received. There really isn't any mobile market point of sale system that we found that works well. A lot of other mobile markets let us know the same thing. So we actually have to utilize 2 different apps. So we have to switch back and forth, which can take a lot of time. So some individuals will pay for their produce with these Farmers Market Nutrition Program coupons. And these are distributed via Office of the Aging, and they're funded through New York State. So seniors can receive these. I believe they have to be 65 years or older, and they get $20 worth of coupons that can only be used at eligible farmers markets or farm stands. It's just a really great program. Helps expand that food access. So, great. Hi. So we're here at the James Prendergast Library, which is our second stop for the mobile market. We've been here 3 years in a row. And really, when we were looking at where we wanted to bring the mobile market, the goal for distribution in a community that's far from local farms or farm stands is to reach as many people as we can and people that need us most. So the library seemed like an excellent partner because of what they're already doing. So they have the summer feeding program, they have story time, they have craft hour, and they've just been phenomenal partners. So we set up here every week, and people from all over the community can come, all ages, all backgrounds, lots of kiddos, which is really fun. And they're just such amazing supports.
My name is Christy Bemis. I am a librarian here at the James Prendergast Library, and we are a site for the Summer Food Service Program. We provide free meals to children 18 and under every day from Monday through Friday throughout the summer, from the end of the school year to the start of the school year. This is a program that is federally funded and run by the YMCA here in Jamestown. In Jamestown, due to the poverty level, every child receives a free lunch and a free breakfast at school. During the pandemic, the schools were closed, so they had to do grab-and-go meals for the kids. And so when the summer program came around, the federal government fortunately provided a waiver that allowed us to go from a sit-down service to a grab-and-go service. So as an extension out of the program during the school year, we continued the grab-and-go lunches here at the James Prendergast Library.
$2. Thank you for your patience. All right, so now we're at the Chautauqua Center, which is our last stop for our Wednesday day, and it's probably one of our busiest stops, and we attribute that to the fact that the Chautauqua Center is a fantastic partner. And so they're a community health center, and I think one of the only doctor's offices, behavioral health and dentistry, that accept Medicaid and Medicare. So that's really important for our community that is 33% poverty rate. And so it's open to, again, any member of the community, but especially their staff really take advantage of the fact that we're here. And another great program that we have is our Veggie RX program. And that was born with the Chautauqua Center because of the fact that so many of our community members just cannot access fresh fruits and veggies. And basically what it is the doctors write a prescription to patients that they have identified as in need of eating more fruits or veggies. And we give them a little prescription card, and they come down here, most of them to this stop because they're patients of the Chautauqua Center. And every week they get 4 produce items for free. And it's a phenomenal program. This is the 3rd year we've done that, and we've had over 80 community members serviced through that program. It's my dream job, and I was so very lucky to have gotten this job as the director of a farmer's market. And so it's just a beautiful thing. It makes me really happy. So thank you.
According to data from the Pew Research Center, more Americans have become conscious of what they eat and where their food comes from, and that's important. Knowing where your food comes from and what goes into growing it is part of responsible and healthy consumption. But it is also important that we realize that our choices don't just affect us. Food waste influences demand, which results in higher prices at the grocery store. And this means that low-income families are most at risk for experiencing food insecurity.
The last element or stage of the food system is just as important as the production element. Without the investment in the care of the land and soil health, production of healthy food cannot happen. We group the activities of food waste reduction with land regeneration because both are so closely interrelated to a food's end stage, but also to a food's first stage.
So in the last segment, we already touched on food waste and explained how it directly links to food insecurity. And as you've also heard, there is waste at every level of the food system. In fact, the U.S. agricultural sector is responsible for discharging over 660 million metric tons of carbon emissions into our atmosphere every year on average. That exacerbates climate change, which results in extreme weather conditions and consequently requires more energy and water to grow our crops on land that is becoming increasingly stressed. Of course, irresponsible farming practices are also to blame for much of the diminished integrity of crop soil. But whether it's because of extreme weather anomalies or improperly regenerated land, the repercussions are the same. More failed and ruined crops. So you see the connection? Poorly managed agricultural and food waste can hurt the land we depend on to grow our food and result in deficient crop yields and even more food waste. It's a very destructive cycle. And while taking advantage of a local or regional food system is a good way to start scaling back on our carbon footprint, that alone is not enough. We need to explore all viable options in our efforts to secure a more sustainable, resilient, and eco-friendly food system. So let's dive a little deeper into the final component of the food system as we visit with 2 farmers who practice what is referred to as regenerative farming.
My name is Jonathan Alt. I am a retired city boy, and my role on the farm is to help Pierre manage it.
My name is Pierre Dion. I'm the owner of Sojourner Farms. I'm a retired physician.
What led me to my involvement with regenerative farming is repairing my wife's health. She was diagnosed with Crohn's, and after several surgeries and lots of medication, she still wasn't healthy. So we changed our diet and got onto clean, whole foods, and that has made all the difference.
I'm from northern Maine originally, and I grew up on a farm, a potato farm in northern Maine. When I first started out, it was a hobby, and now it's a business. So you look at it from a different perspective if you expect it to at least pay the bills. But I get some enjoyment out of problem solving.
On a regenerative farm, there is no waste. We recycle and upcycle anything that will decompose into compost bins or compost piles, and then in the future we'll use those on the land. Through rotational grazing, we are, in essence, moving our waste around the farm so it can be recycled by the microbiome of the land.
I think diversification on the farm is key. It tends to minimize our negative impacts on nature and the environment. And I think regenerative farming to a large degree does that. And having different species of animals helps manage parasites. It allows them to use different types of forages versus monoculture, where if some disease or bug comes in, it can wipe you out. If we have issues with one sector of the farm, the other 3 or 4 sectors are probably doing okay and help us through the rough times, basically.
Yes, we have been affected by climate change. We have had longer, hotter, drier periods throughout the summer. And what we're doing is, through observational management, we are changing our strategies. Like in a drought, we'll feed hay and slow the animals down. We basically move the animals as fast as the grass is growing. We're very aware of food waste. It is disheartening. That's how I feel about it. And how we could deal with it is by not being so superficial, not wanting everything perfect, and also by value adding to these products that aren't the most presentable, by turning them into shelf-stable products.
Food waste is a big issue globally. I don't think there's lack of production, there's lack of efficient distribution, basically. We need to pay attention to where the food is going, make sure it's distributed equitably. There shouldn't be any food deserts in this country, especially. We need to take a step back and start ordering or obtaining our food closer to home.
I don't believe there's enough cooperation among farmers. I would love for there to be, but there isn't. One person is saying, hey, we need to create as much as we can in the shortest time as we can. And on the opposing side, it would be, we need to create just enough and be environmentally conscious. So those two roads don't always meet.
We've done several things on the farm to try to become as carbon neutral as possible. This home that we're in right now used to be heated with fuel oil. We've gone to geothermal. We've gone to solar panels, so we're still on grid, but we don't pull any electricity from the grid, basically, and that's helped create resilience for our home and also for the farm. We have solar panels on one of our barns to run the freezers, the walk-in freezer and refrigerator. We have multiple ponds, but we also have a solar well as a backup. So that basically allows us to diversify our water sources. That helps us get closer to being carbon neutral.
There's only 4 producers in the country that create bottlenecks to our food system. And if one of those goes out, then everybody panics and shelves are bare. So I believe what we need to do to fix that is to decentralize the food system, make it more community-based, and have tens of thousands of these local community-driven farms like ours.
There's niches for everything, but we need to make the playing field even so that small family farms can survive.
My name's Sarah, and I own Clearwater Creek Compost. I started my business 1 week before the pandemic really hit this country. I didn't think that it would really have much effect, and I was right. I was able to just continue doing it through it. It's always been important to me to do something positive for the earth. And I saw that the only option for food waste and organic waste was the landfill. And I thought there's got to be a better option, and there just wasn't. So I decided to create one. And hopefully I set a precedent that other people can follow. And I think that more people have just gotten excited about composting, and that's my whole goal. This compost business was easy for me to start with very little overhead and very little investment to get it started. And it's been profitable every single year. By composting, we can create healthier food for everybody. We can create a healthier earth, and we can reduce our trash and our landfill waste. I do find non-compostable items in my compost, yes. So I pick up food scraps from houses, and people are still learning, and that's okay. And also kids will throw in a fork or wrappers or something like that. And when I find them, I just take them out. So to aerate my piles, I use my tractor and I turn the piles. So it's important to get everything that's on the outside to the inside and everything that's on the inside out to the outside of the pile. And as it's mixing, it's just mixing oxygen with everything. So New York State actually just passed a law, I believe a year ago or two, requiring composting. So they're starting small, and they're starting with a list of businesses that are going to be required to send all their organic material to compost or donate it rather than sending it to the landfill. So that's pretty cool. That's a huge step in the right direction. People have been just really excited to see a compost service pop up in our area, and my customers thank me every single day for picking up their organic waste. And also, it's important to know your options. So if you do have a composting service in your area, maybe utilize that, because then you can send your food back to the earth instead of sending it to the landfill. My pickup area is about 50 miles in diameter. So just in this one little area, we've saved 30,000 pounds from the landfill and given it all back to the earth. We need to just be more aware of the options for food waste. Like, people need to know that they can compost, and you can compost in your own backyard. So I think on every level of the food system, there's more options, and people need to be aware of those options. The earth is magical. Like, composting is the earth's way of taking organic material and breaking it back down into its very smallest nutrients, and then those very smallest nutrients get to feed other plants and grow other food and nourish more humans and animals and everything. And the tiny little microbes and all of the magic that is happening in compost, that's natural to the earth, and we need to be utilizing that process. We need to work with the earth to break down all of our food waste instead of against the earth and filling the earth with our food waste.
By adopting a few new habits and utilizing natural resources in ways that don't alter the land, we can reduce our impact on the environment, lower the cost of food production, increase energy efficiency, and even limit food waste, all while retaining the natural topography of the land for future generations. In a country that has achieved so many amazing things, it is hard to understand why we can't figure out how to work in unison to save the very things that are keeping us alive.
Some of the first impacts of the global pandemic were experienced at the community level, when grocery shelves were empty, people lost their jobs, and individuals with COVID were required to quarantine in their homes for several weeks. Communities quickly saw an increase in food insecurity. The pandemic not only generated new incidences of food insecurity, but magnified the plight of people who've been historically marginalized from equitable food access.
Long after the pandemic's most adverse effects, there are still lingering consequences to our food supply. The most concerning are those that result in people going hungry. It's a fixable problem if we commit ourselves to solving it, and that's why in making this series, we had a few clear objectives. To determine the effects the COVID-19 pandemic had on local, regional, and global food systems through an analysis of the food system in the western southern tier of New York State. To help you better understand and appreciate how our food systems work and recognize how much more reliable and eco-friendly local food systems are for us as consumers. to shine a light on some of the issues that our farmers, distributors, and advocates face on a daily basis at every stage of the food system, and to issue a call to action by encouraging you to make a few new choices that will positively impact the local food system, your health, the environment, and ultimately your own bottom line. And not to be too presumptuous, but I think we've managed to check all those boxes. So now that we are nearing the end of our journey through the food system in the western southern tier of New York State, let's have one last visit with local farmer and farmers market manager Stephanie Benning.
I'm Stephanie Benning, and I'm the manager of the Olean Area Farmers Market, and I've been doing that for 6 years now. But I was involved with the market previously as both a vendor employee for farms and then later as a volunteer to get the SNAP program up and running. So it was, I think, pretty new working with the Farmers Market Federation of New York at that time to do that program. And we've never stopped doing it since. We added the Double Up program into it maybe around 2015, 2016. So now we participate in that to match the SNAP dollars up to $20 for additional fruit and veggie tokens. That program gets more food to more people. It frees up people's income to spend at other vendors and gets more money allocated toward our local farmers. So I love it. And that's what we need more than anything, is enough support for farms that farmers markets can continue to exist. Because farmers markets depend on having enough of a variety to get people to want to come. And when farms are disappearing, I forget what the number is, I just saw on Agrarian Trust the other day, like 37 farms a day or something like that. There's not enough variety, even for the solid vendors that are there, to make the customers want to keep coming every week. And as soon as that starts, it's a slippery slope from there. So we're really fortunate in Olean to have had the city to help us secure getting funding for this building. It's really a special building, and I can't imagine a better way to get food to people in an urban area and give them the opportunity to see each other and socialize and meet the farmers all at once and get the freshest stuff possible. I mean, I think it's a lifeline for a community. I'm such a big picture thinker, and it's hard sometimes for me to stay focused on just what the farmers market has to do, because I want to do everything. I want to have citywide composting in Olean. I want to be going out picking it up. And so I have to keep my vision focused when I'm working for the farmers market, because I easily want to be doing everything. I'm the proudest of the fact that we are vendor run. I think that's rare and special, and it gives the vendors the opportunity to really have a voice in things that affect them. And I love that. The food system, the fact that we can even say that is the problem, and which connects to thinking too globally in terms of it. But every region needs a food system, one that makes sense for it. And helping farms to have a network together where they can access multiple markets is a really positive way to build a local food system that works for us.
Up until this point, we spent the majority of our time calling attention to issues affecting our food system that were either amplified by the pandemic or have been around for so long that they've become par for the course, instead of receiving the urgent attention they so desperately need. But let's bring it all together so that we can leave with a good understanding of where we're at and what we should be striving towards. The push to move away from the global food system has merit. You see, while there are many, especially in lesser developed countries, who tout the benefits of globalization because it has opened up trade, created jobs, and even helped to alleviate food insecurity, the truth is the cost far outweighs the benefits. The global food system is responsible for contributing an enormous amount of greenhouse gas emissions to the global warming we are now experiencing. Too much of our land is being used to grow food in unsustainable ways and is having a dreadful effect on the environment. The irony is that large-scale agriculture is not only a significant contributor to climate change, but also a victim. Crop loss due to climate change creates huge disruption. And as the pandemic proved, disruptions to the global food supply chain can have catastrophic repercussions for all who depend on it. So really, it's just common sense. If everyone depends on one system and it fails, then everyone suffers. But if we all depend on our regional system, then failing systems can't affect everyone. Globalization also increases the cost of inputs and forces the price of commodities to unsustainable levels for local farmers, who can't produce enough to compete with larger farms, and usually don't have access to global markets. Then there's water, the lifeblood of this planet, and without which we will all cease to exist within a few days. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, on average, agriculture accounts for nearly 70% of the world's freshwater withdrawals. By 2057, when the population is expected to reach 10 billion, that will need to increase by approximately 15%. The fact is that the global market encourages the overproduction of food to stimulate economic growth, which in turn puts a strain on freshwater supplies. Another consequence of globalization is the rise of chain stores and supermarkets that source their goods from far and wide, and for the most part don't benefit local economies. When domestic policies are made, they tend to ignore the health of the consumer, the farmer, and the vitality of local economies. They are geared toward profit-minded, corporate agribusinesses who can afford to lobby for what they want. The list of problems with the global food system is too long to explore fully in this series. But you've heard enough to know that the problems are real and demand urgent attention. But let's talk about our local and regional systems, because therein lies the answer to many of our food supply needs. A lot of credit must go to the pantries and food banks who provided emergency food services during the pandemic and played a significant role in mitigating the increase in food insecurity, and in remembering the tragic 2022 hate crime that took place in Buffalo, New York, and forced the temporary closure of the only supermarket in that area. It was the local food bank and food pantries, not some global entity, that came to the rescue to prevent a low food access crisis. It's the people who are close to us that will be the first to lend a helping hand, and local food systems are just that, communities of people helping each other. You've repeatedly heard that localized food primarily benefit local economies. So we need to return to investing in and building or rebuilding local and regional food systems. When food systems are strengthened at a regional level, they tend to operate somewhat independently of the larger global system. So what then are some of the things we can do to strengthen the food system in the western southern tier of New York State that might also apply to local food systems everywhere? Well, here are some ideas. The Farm Bill was and remains a good idea. It is currently being improved so that it can better support small farms and local food systems. If it continues to evolve in consideration of an ever-changing economy and ecology, then we are on a good trajectory. Of course, our nation's antitrust laws can also help make our food system more resilient and equitable if we can get back to enforcing them. They will authorize the government to break up corporations that monopolize markets and restrain trade. Approximately 17% of the region's 250,000 people live in poverty, which greatly impacts their ability to have access to not only their minimum daily food requirements, but also the quality of food needed for good health indicators. A continuation of and additional support for the programs that are making a real difference in the southern tier will help to increase food access and reduce food insecurity. The truth is, our biggest problem when it comes to food insecurity and food waste is over. It's true. Most of the food loss and waste occurs at the consumption phase, and that is a direct result of the overs. Let me walk you through it. We overproduce food, overpurchase groceries, overstock our fridges, overfill our plates, and overlook those in need. And wouldn't you know it, the overproduction of food is because of a false flag, not a real need. Companies overmarket to influence impulse shopping, and that is construed as market demand, when the true need is from people who can't afford to buy healthy food. If we could separate binge demand from real need, we will actually be able to put a significant dent in food insecurity while producing less. Farm workers in New York State, including the H-2A workers mentioned earlier in this series, all have mixed feelings about the new workweek threshold instituted by the New York Farm Laborers Wage Board. The new threshold requires farmers to pay farm workers overtime after 60 hours, which they plan to bring down to 40 hours by 2032. But according to farmers we interviewed, farm work is not like other occupations and shouldn't be treated as such. They claim that this is a burden that their already thin profit margins cannot survive. They're also convinced that if H-2A workers can't get enough work hours in New York State because farmers can't afford to pay the overtime, they will be left with no choice but to go to another state. So some New York State farmers are of the opinion that if this is what policymakers endorse, then the playing field should be leveled by having all surrounding states follow the same rules. And this must be done at a federal level. Of course, farms and supporting businesses should have an adequately compensated workforce no matter what. And while legislation has been put in place to reimburse farmers for some of the wage increases, the best way to avoid overburdening taxpayers would be by strengthening our local and regional food systems so that our farmers can be profitable enough to be self-sufficient. Obviously, there wouldn't be a problem with aging farmers if there were younger farmers coming up who could replace them. And as we mentioned before, this is why creating pathways for emerging farmers to be able to secure available and affordable land and infrastructure is critical. But so too are succession plans. And while succession plans can range from developing employee-run co-ops like the ABER suggested, to selling or contracting the farm to non-family members, most farmers consider their farm their legacy and would like nothing more than to pass it down to the next generation.
My name's Layla Monkaman. I'm 17 years old. I'm about to be 18. And I had an internship at Rise and Swine, and I learned a lot in the last year. I actually just graduated high school. I finished the last couple years homeschooled, so I was able to kind of use my job here as a motivation to be a part of something way more rewarding than I ever thought it would be. I do all the daily chores, that is moving all the animals and feeding them and watering them and any other projects that need to be done around the farm. Not a lot of people realize the work that goes into the food that goes onto their plate. They just don't know about it, really. I think one main problem is that so many people rely on things like supermarkets, and when people rely on things like supermarkets, they're relying on huge manufacturing farms. And if they were to do things like shop locally, that would help out all of the local farmers rather than the big manufacturing facilities. My favorite thing on this farm is probably split between two things. Well, other than my amazing bosses. That one mama sow that loves her belly rubs, that'll just flop over like a puppy dog, or a couple of our breeding cows, Clarabelle and Babybelle, and Walter the bull. Oh my gosh, they're such babies to me. For me, my job is amazing. I mean, I provide clean, healthy food for families, and I do plan on staying in the local farming industry. I don't know where exactly I'll go, but I'm very happy where I am right now at Rise and Slime. A little over a year ago, I never would have thought I'd be doing something like this, but it just kind of fell into my lap, and right now I'm just seeing where it takes me.
With an average of 12,235 farms being lost annually in the U.S. since 2010, we need to do more to attract younger farmers, and also to ease the burden for those who inherit farms from their families.
Capital gains, I think, is a big factor if farms have to change hands, especially if they're being inherited. If it's a smaller farm, I think it's less of an issue. So it doesn't really pertain to us per se, but on the larger farms, if they have to pay capital gains on the full assessed value, it's almost prohibitive.
We have
have a farm. We raise Black Angus beef cows and pigs, and it's pretty cool to have like locally raised meat. You know, they're not no growth hormones. You know where they're coming from. No antibiotics. Our herd is very small. The pastures that they're on are massive, so you know that they have like a good quality of life, and I think that that's so important.
Consumer demand for locally sourced meat, dairy products, and processed food items remains strong. This is the conundrum. Strong demand, but inconsistent and low supply of local food, especially meat. Bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the processing element has meant that local output hasn't met local demand. The fix for this problem seems like a no-brainer. Legislation should allow for more USDA processing facilities by investing in community-scale processing establishments located near the farming areas. But many roads lead back to issues like climate change and food waste, so while we're on the topic of meat processing, it would be prudent to mention that raising livestock for meat consumption generates as much greenhouse gas emissions as all the automobiles in the world combined. So we also have an obligation to the environment when we think about livestock. And while meat is a very important source of nutrition, and also has cultural significance for people all around the world, the consumption of meat has increased exponentially over the last 50 years. And this is not only bad for the environment, but also increases the risk of heart disease, cancer, and obesity. Cutting back on meat consumption would go a long way in reducing carbon emissions and is also healthier for everyone. And since food waste was mentioned, here's another good idea that will make for more responsible meat consumption. We need to encourage more whole animal buyers, such as restaurants and institutions, that will use the entire animal, which reduces waste and, in many cases, the need for USDA slaughter. We all share in the responsibility for getting to this point, and therefore the onus is on all of us to correct our course for the sake of the next generation. Livestock farmers are simply trying to keep up with market demand, and unfortunately there are consequences to rapid mass production of most commodities. Those consequences underscore the many benefits of strengthening local and regional food systems, especially investing in farms embodying regenerative practices that improve the land. There are many problems that can't be fixed by simply throwing money at them. But fortunately, aging infrastructure is not one of those problems. Local and regional food systems can benefit tremendously from good roadways, aggregation and food distribution centers, efficient vehicles, appropriate cold and frozen storage. The list is quite extensive, but certainly attainable. And infrastructure benefits everyone, not just the agri-industry. Our findings as we presented them suggest that the pandemic did indeed affect the global food system the most. But that doesn't mean that the local and regional systems didn't also take a hit. It's just that they proved to be considerably more resilient. So in conclusion, it would be safe to say that the push to reinvigorate and return to local systems is our most viable option in our quest for sustainability. There is a trending effort to view food as a basic human right, almost like a public utility, and that access to basic food for good human health should be provided to all people. And it all starts with a conversation. We hope that you enjoyed this series and that it will help guide you towards better choices in the future. So thank you for joining us, and welcome to the conversation.
I will be the last to fall.
I'm a farmer. I'm not going to quit being a farmer until the Lord decides to take us up there.
I won't shed a tear for them to see.
This is where I find my happiness.
I won't have your name to call.
Did I talk long enough? Is that what you made me cry?
I will be the last to fall.
Challenges just make us stronger as long as we keep our focus in the right place.
The best crop of Sunny Cove Farm are the children that we've raised there.
I'm here for the duration of it, and probably even farther than that, because I will probably be put somewhere on this farm when it's all done and over with. I will still be here on the farm somewhere.
It's really amazing.
Well, welcome to our food system.
Our goal here is just to bring that fresh local produce to the community and really emphasize that it's local. It's local, and there's so much power in that.